Hi there folks, this is Adam with 8-Badge Gaming coming to you today with the final video in our Gardevoir Gallade series, or our Gardelade series as I've been calling it, and this is our deck review. Today we're going to be discussing the matchups that we faced during our actual gameplay series. We're going to go over the cards in the deck, what we expect to lose with rotation, and what we would like to build the deck as in a post-rotation world. This is definitely a deck that I know I'll try to make work in a post-rotation series, but we'll see what we can cover in this video itself here first. So let's go ahead and bring the deck up on screen here. Now, as we go through our matches, we did have a couple games where our opponents got stuck and they just ended up conceding. They are games that I would have liked to see flesh out a bit more. Now, that's primarily our first game, which was against the Zoroark Marcargo deck, which is definitely a deck I think that could be very strong in a post-rotation world. Marcargo being able to do half of a Mallow for free every turn pairs extremely well with Zoroark being able to draw you that exact card that you've tutored up. It keeps you from getting card stuck. It lets you get key pieces that you might need to be able to do a set of plays that will win you the game without actually using your supporter for turn. Being able to tutor up, say, a Guzma, put it on top, and then draw it for a turn by discarding any card from hand using the trade ability on the Zoroark is extremely strong, for example. Now, our second game was against the Zoroark Garbodor, and this was like the first game. Our opponent got stuck on cards, ended up conceding before we really got to have much of a match out of it, but it's definitely a deck that we probably won't be seeing as much of post-rotation due to the fact that they're losing the trash sorry, not the Trash Avalanche Garbodor, but the Garbotoxin Garbodor will be rotating. So they'll be losing the ability Lock, which is one of the key draws of pairing Garbodor with the Zoroarks. That plus the one prize attacker for a single energy late using Trash Avalanche is extremely good as well. But the Garbotoxin being paired with specifically things like, say, Bursting Balloon, where our opponent gets shut down on their abilities during their turn, it gets passed back to the Zoroark deck, the Bursting Balloon falls off, and suddenly they're able to use their trades again. So it lets you shut down your opponent's abilities during key turns, and then follow up with just the 1-2 punches of Riotous Beatings or Trash Avalanche. Now, we did get to have a good full game as our third game against Rayquaza GX. It was a pretty close game, but I think the matchup overall is still probably in our favor a little bit, and it's because of the fairy weakness on the Rayquaza. With the fairy weakness and a Rayquaza that's suited up to attack, for example, we're looking at a minimum of 3 energy attached to that Rayquaza. Then we just need to attach a single energy to our Gardevoir. It does have to be a fairy energy for us to be able to use the Infinite Force attack, but that means that we're going to be looking at 4 total energy between both active Pokemon, which is 120 damage, which gets doubled by weakness, means that we can hit for a single energy on a Rayquaza and take a KO. Now, we can replace, say, an energy on a Rayquaza with a choice band. There's different numbers that we can look at there, but Gardevoir is definitely strong against Rayquaza. Now, Rayquaza itself is very aggressive. It can take some early KOs. If they get the Guzmas to put up your Ralts and your Curlias before you get into Gardevoir territory, then they're going to be able to take some easy KOs overall. And they can accelerate energy onto their actual Rayquazas using the actual come into play effect or the enter the bench effect, where you mill yourself 3 and then you could attach an energy from a discard to that Rayquaza. So it lets them suit up rather quickly. They do lose max elixirs, which some people have been using to increase the explosiveness of the deck, but they will still be pretty consistent. Now, in a post-rotation world, they might look at, say, adding in things like Vikavolt to be able to fuel up that Rayquaza a little bit quicker. It'll work a little bit like the Tapu Bulu deck, but I don't know if it's going to be any better than the Tapu Bulu deck. Now, it doesn't require you to have to discard the energy, which is probably where we're going to be looking to take advantage of, because you'll be able to, say, use the Vikavolts each turn to put an energy or 2 energy onto a Rayquaza and put 2 energy onto another Rayquaza, and then that makes, say, your active Rayquaza all the stronger. Now, we were able to win the game either way, because we were able to exploit the weaknesses, hit for massive amounts of damage with infinite forces of our Gardevoirs, and just overall take the match as a whole. Now, our third gameplay video was another double feature due to short games. It was us versus a Buzzwole Lycanroc deck, and then the Psychic Spread deck. Now, we were able to win both our matches. Our opponents did get stuck a little bit, but we were able to just suit up quick Gardevoirs, start taking one-shots on their one-prize attackers, and even if we are only taking one-prize attackers, taking one-shots still lets us quickly churn through our opponent's Pokemon, especially if they're investing energy on them at all, and they're not looking at being able to one-shot us back. Especially that Spread deck needs to get a lot of damage on the board before it can use, say, a Magical Swap from a Lele to coalesce it all into a single Gardevoir to take it out, for example. Then all Gardevoir has to do is just get a couple energy on it, or a second Gardevoir up, and then we're going to just continue taking one-shots. The Gallade is also very strong there. A lot of our opponent's Pokemon are 130 HP or less, so being able to use a, say, supporter at one point and then being able to just take a KO is pretty good there. Now, we lose quite a bit in rotation. That helps us there, like the Gallades, like some of our supporters like Ends, which can bring our opponents down, like, say, for example, the Super Rod, which lets us recycle some of our energy in our Pokemon. But I still think in a post-rotation world we're going to be pretty good against them. Now, for the Buzzwole Lycanroc, that's a deck that does lose some of its consistency when it loses max elixirs. It also loses strong energies, which is pretty key for the deck as well. So the deck is going to definitely adjust post-rotation. It still does have access to its one of Beast Energy Prism in the deck itself, because that doesn't rotate, obviously, but they're still limited to only one. Baby Buzzwole is still going to be a strong option in a Zoroark-heavy world, because Zoroark doesn't rotate either. So I definitely think that Gardevoir could still be pretty good into the face of that, but when Buzzwole doesn't have access to things like the Max Elixirs, it does get a significant chunk weaker. Now, we'll still have access to things like Beast Ring, for example, but its early game is going to slow down considerably without access to Max Elixirs. Now, our final match and game overall was against Zoropod. Now, that is Zoroark Gliscopod, and that's a deck that's definitely going to be extremely strong post-rotation. It loses next to nothing. While it does lose things like, say, Puzzle of Time, we gain things in things like, say, Marcargo and other utility Pokemon that's going to let us put the good stuff on the top of our deck, basically. We still keep most of our trainers, things like Mallow, Guzma, Cynthia. We do start looking at other trainers as well, such as, say, Judge, for example, for that hand disruption when our opponent gets up high in card size, or card amounts, and things like that, but the deck itself is still extremely strong. The pilot we were against was also very well versed in their deck and was basically just able to tear us apart. It was almost like a no contest, and that also just shows the strength of Zoroark Gliscopod, that if you play the deck well, if you know it inside and out, it can just dump on your opponent all day long. Now, losing Puzzle of Time is a pretty big loss for Zoroark decks overall, but I don't think it's going to invalidate the decks entirely. I still think they're going to be extremely strong in a post-rotation world. Now, looking at this deck, if I were to take this to standard overall as it stood, I would probably make a few changes, but they wouldn't be major. I would love to squeeze in another choice band, but I'm not sure what we'd be looking at dropping. The consistency of getting the choice band there could be really good. To just get that extra 30 damage in, there were times where that extra 30 points could just mean game, and that's where it's going to really shine. Now, for me, I do personally like the Cynthia over N. While N is good when you're facing off against a lot of Zoroark decks because they're looking to get their hands very high, they're looking to take that early advantage, Cynthia is just going to be better for you when you take that early advantage, that early lead on the prizes overall. So that's definitely something that I would look at adjusting. Now, In a post-rotation world, we're losing quite a bit of the deck. We're no longer going to be able to get the Mysterious Treasure synergy going in a post-rotation world because we're losing our Psychic Ralts and Kirlias. And short of them getting a reprint or a new Psychic version of Ralts or Kirlia, or even a Psychic Gardevoir, there's not much that we're going to be able to use that Mysterious Treasure for. Us losing the Gallade as well is a pretty big deal. That is one of our key cards against the Zoroark matchups because it just lets us one-shot them. The Premonition is also extremely good. Being able to arrange the top 5 cards of your deck in any order once per turn is extremely good when we're looking to, say, do a shuffle supporter like N or Cynthia and then rearrange the cards post supporter cat or post-supporter usage. Being able to rearrange the top cards when we're low in hand and then draw the prime card that we need out of those top 5 with a Rangaroo, for example, is also strong. So this will definitely be a card that will be missed post-rotation. Now, we will also lose out on things like the Bridget, for example. Not being able to go for 3 basics on the first turn is going to be a little bit sad, but we still do have things like, say, Pokemon Fan Club, which is going to let us get 2 basics. So we're going to be down 1 basic count overall, but we do get access to things like Nest Ball to help shore up that shortage there. Now, a big loss here is also going to be Parallel City. The bench restriction against Zoroark is a very strong effect, greatly reducing the damage of the Riotous Beatings overall, but the bench restriction is good against a lot of decks. When our opponent puts down 3 basics and you go Parallel City and now they can't Lele on the following turn, that is a beating to say the least. So Parallel City will sorely be missed as just the utility card that it is. Now, we do also lose straight up the Ends and the Sycamores, which are some of the greater card draw consistency in the deck, or the card draw disruption via N. But we do still have things like, say, Judge and Cynthia on the format that we can use to shore up our numbers there. We are only looking at 9 total draw supporters in this variant of the deck, so going up to, say, 4 Cynthias, some number of Judge, maybe putting in, say, a single Copycat or a Hala or something of those sorts could definitely help us there as well. Now, draw supports overall are just going to be consistently weaker post-rotation, so I don't think we're worried about that too much. So overall, I did have fun with this last callback to Gardevoir before we lose a chunk of it to rotation. I do look forward to trying to build a viable Gardevoir list post-rotation, though stage 2s might be a little too slow when we're looking at a aggressive format with things like Rayquaza available. But we'll have to see. Now that does clue up our video for today. This has been the deck review for our Gardevoir Gallade, our Gallade series. I do hope you've enjoyed these videos so far. It was a fun time for us. We did end up going 5-1 overall, which is a pretty great record with a lot of people running the new gas, like things like Marcargo, the Rayquazas, etc. So it will be nice to see how Gardevoir shapes up in a new standard meta. So thank you again for your viewership. We do greatly appreciate it here at 8-Badge Gaming. I do hope you tune in next week, where we're going to come back with a updated Alolan Ninetales list, courtesy of Mike Pinn, as his callback to his early pre-rotation and early post-rotation from last year days within the Pokemon TCG itself. So thank you again, and this is Adam with 8-Badge Gaming, signing off.